So this morning we discussed Principle 1. We talked about our prosperity type, and we defined the 4 fields. And this afternoon we're going to have 3 sections. One is on the nature of the temperaments of the people in the field. That'll be our first section. We'll have that for an hour and then we'll take a little break. Then we're going to have a section on what happens when you go in the wrong field, which is the most wow of all the presentations that I'm giving. And then we'll do that for half an hour, and then we'll have 45 minutes to go through a summary of the whole book, where we'll touch upon a lot of things we don't touch upon in depth. So this is really, in identifying my prosperity type and career field, Principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. So this is discovering what my temperament is, especially in the 4 fields. So again, we're referring to Krishna's famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita that there are 4 fields, and that one's temperament or one's guna should match one's activities. And again, I'm going to ask you that I'm sure you know the Sanskrit names for these 4 fields, and I'd like you to forget that you know them, at least for a week, then you can remember again. And again, this verse about that we cannot repress our nature. Our nature will exhibit itself. Now, what we're going to be looking at here is we're going to be looking at each field in 2 categories. One is our basic tendency, beginning proclivity for a particular field. And you notice in the corner there's a little box of a baby walking. So any of the slides that have that on it is about beginning proclivity. Now, generally in the Shastra, when these 4 fields are described, they're described in terms of expertise. And a lot of the things that people bring up when we discuss this is, well, I don't see that everybody today actually acts at that level of dharmic expertise. Yes. So we are going to find throughout society people with the inclination for a particular field, with the temperament, with the nature of a particular field, but they still need to get training in order to come to the level of dharmic expertise in that field. Just like we need training in the information of a career, and we need training in the skills of a career, we also need training in the dharma of a career. If that were not the case, then Prabhupada wouldn't have told us to teach Varnashram. If the 4 fields always exist, and people with the 4 temperaments always exist, why would we need to do anything? So one reason is that people may be in the wrong place, which we'll discuss in our second session. And the other reason is that people are in the right place, but they haven't developed the dharmic expertise of that field. So we're going to look right now at both. I mean, even Mr. Usain Bolt, he had to start out like this. Yeah? Okay. So as we go through these, I'd like you to be considering these kind of questions. What information, what skills, what values, but particularly, what potential inclinations do I have, and what dharmic expertise do I have? And we talked a little bit this morning about how you can't just ask somebody, what are you good at, or what do you like? This time we're going to start with the field of resources. So what is an inclination? How would you see an inclination in someone for the field of resources? Well, they probably get joy from dealing with money or from dealing with the natural world. Now, all children like to make money because it represents freedom and power. But we're talking about a situation where somebody is really interested in that. Yeah? I think, probably all of us sold something or whatever, to get a little bit of cash when we were kids. But I'm thinking our youngest son, who works in the field of resources, When he was 7 years old, he started a business selling office supplies to the kids in the Gurukula. So we would work with my husband to order things from a catalog. It was a physical catalog in those days. And then my husband would give him the supplies and he would sell it at a markup. And then he would keep the difference between what we had to pay and the markup. When he was 9, he started a little prasadam business. So in the school, we had a projector and a screen, and people in their homes in those days didn't usually have big screen TVs. So every Sunday, after the temple program, we would show an episode of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. You all remember those old ones? Mm-hmm. With what we would call the special defects instead of special effects. The 2 arrows and things like that. Anyway, we would show those. And the community would come and watch that, and he started out selling frozen juice popsicles that he made, and he progressed to like pizza and cheesecake and things like this. So you'll see some kind of inclination for, really for making money or dealing with the natural world, dealing with natural resources, again, beyond just a kid that has a lemonade stand at some point. And tending to be ambitious. People in this field, they have an inclination for this field, they tend to be ambitious to increase their own wealth. They're rarely satisfied with their success. The Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam says that people in this field are always thirsty. Not for water. They're always thinking of how to improve and expand in quality, quantity, or both. They're willing to take some risks. They have great drives. They tend to be goal-oriented rather than process-oriented. And then they have some intuitive grasp of the flow of resources. All right, now we're going to look at those with dharmic expertise. So those who have dharmic expertise in the field of resources tend to be, to some extent, systems thinkers, although the systems that they understand are related to their particular type of resources. Right? If they're working with the land and the animals, they can feel and understand the whole system of the seasons, natural production, their schedules, the competitors in the marketplace, the types of weather, the types of soil, and so forth. So the flows that they grasp and understand are those of natural resources and money. They want to redirect those flows to themselves, increase it, and then distribute it to society. Now these people have a put your own oxygen mask on first mentality. And they have to, because their goal is to create sustainable regenerative wealth for society. They know that they have to first bring the flow to themselves and increase it before they're going to be able to serve others. Otherwise they can't make sure the whole thing is going to keep going. Srila Prabhupada says that those who are expert in this field can make money when things are going up and make money when things are going down. Right? They can maybe change exactly what product are they selling or what are they growing in response to changes in climate or changes in demand. They can anticipate various pitfalls and how to deal with competitors, unreliable dependencies. They can see, how are the resources flowing. They will always save seeds from the harvest in order to have something to plant the next season. Now this is a very important thing to understand. We talked about the people and resources are the biggest givers of charity because they have the most wealth. However, they're not generous to the point that they will exhaust everything. Because if they exhaust everything, there's nothing to put back into the agriculture or the business to keep it sustainable and regenerative. People who have dharmic expertise in resources are willing to sacrifice everything for preserving the ethical flow of resources in the society. Now again, my youngest son really exemplified to me the dharma of this field when he said to me, I think he was in his late 20s, he said, Mata, when I was like 20, 21, I had already contributed more wealth to society than you and Father spent on raising me. That's the actual mood of the dharma of the field of resources. It appears like, well, they're bringing it to themselves, they're increasing it, they're making a profit, but their idea is to make society wealthy. And he said this, they have 3 children, he said this about their children as well. He said, our goal as parents is that our children should contribute more wealth to society than we are investing in them. And these are the questions they ask about their work. Is it sustainable and is it regenerative? The people in this field are expansive. This always thirsty. They are expansive people. Also, Srila Prabhupada explains many times that this is a field of diplomacy. You don't expect advertisements to be completely honest. You don't go in a shop and expect them to tell you what their profit margin is. Right? There actually, Prabhupada says, some diplomacy is required in this field. At the same time, one of the ethical qualities of this field is socham. In Bhagavad Gita 16:1-3, Srila Prabhupada says that the quality of socham, or cleanliness, not dealing in what Prabhupada calls the black market. In other words, making sure all dealings are ethical and above board. But at the same time, being diplomatic. This is also an unsentimental field. They're not going to give a lower price to a poor person. Because if they do that, the business is not sustainable. And if the business is not sustainable, they're not going to be able to maintain their employees, and they're not going to be able to maintain the general public. Any questions about the temperament of the field of those who work in the field of resources? Okay, we're going to the field of artistry. So here we have initial proclivity. People who take their joy in performing, making things, cleaning things, exercising a craft, using tools, using their body as a tool. Now, one difficulty is that all children like to make things. They all like to draw, they all like to create things. Another difficulty is that Krishna distinguishes between work and recreation in the 6th chapter. He said the yogi should be temperate in eating, sleeping, working, and recreation. And because the field of artistry is the field that supplies the pleasures of society, when we want to have recreation, we tend to do things in artistry, even if that's not our actual field. You might be running a business during your working hours, and when you come home, you play a game of soccer. Right? For recreation. Or you make something, you have a little woodworking shop in your garage, where you build some furniture for your family or your friends. But someone who really wants to do this as their regular thing, that's satisfaction. I made that. I fixed that. I cleaned that. And some mood of service. Happy to do things that other people enjoy. And this sort of distinguishes the proclivity for artistry from the enjoyment we get from recreation. If I'm doing woodworking for recreation, I'm doing it for myself, or maybe my very close family and friends. And if someone said, well, would you want to open a woodworking shop and monetize this? And we go, no, that's not what I want to do. But the inclination of those in the field of artistry is exactly that. They want to produce beautiful furniture for others, that will go in others' houses, that they will never even see again. So that kind of inclination. This is a field, the Shastras say, of honesty. Now, what kind of honesty is there in the field of artistry? So this is the honesty that, like, if you hire an HVAC person, they'll give you a bill for the pipe, or the air conditioner or the heater, and they'll give you the receipt of what they paid for it. So they'll say, this cost me $100 and I'm charging you $100, and then I'm charging you $250 for labor, correct? Right? And they'll tell you honestly, well, this heater will work for your purposes, I don't know if this one will, I don't know if this one will. And you count on them to have that kind of honesty. In the Bhagavatam 11:9-13, it's explained that there was an arrow maker who was so absorbed in making his arrow that he didn't notice when the king's retinue went by. which we would assume would be a very colorful and noisy occurrence. So all of us, when we're doing work we love, go into a state of flow and become absorbed in our work, but that's especially evident in the field of artistry, which is again why we tend to do those sort of activities for recreation. But they have great satisfaction in the craft. The love of one's craft, the satisfaction of doing a needed essential service, the dignity of a job well done. There's kind of a natural humility in this field. And people want to serve others. In many ways, we can say the essential temperament of the field of artistry, of all the four fields, is the closest to bhakti. Now, there's something that's favorable for bhakti in each of the four fields. Like in resources, you're dealing with Lakshmi Devi. Right? You're dealing with Mother Bhumi, or you're dealing with Lakshmi Devi. And you can see this is service I'm doing for Srimati Radharani. But the mentality of artistry is closest to the mentality of bhakti. This really became clear to me when I was in St. Petersburg. I was staying at the home of some devotees who were out of town, and on their walls there were 15 original oil paintings from one Russian devotee, Yugala Priya. So I had a lot of her artwork on my computer as electronic files, and my daughter loves her work, so my daughter had a lot of the prints of her artwork on her walls. But wow, seeing the originals was a completely different experience. It was oil paint, and she had created texture by using texture in the paint itself. You've seen that? Right? So like the pearls Krishna was wearing were each little dollops of paint. You couldn't see that in a print or on a screen. And she mixed sparkles in with the paint. It was amazing. I was going from one picture to another, just like, wow, 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 wow. It was just, I was overwhelmed. And then I sat down and I thought, I wonder how long it took this artist to paint each of these paintings. And she'll never see any of them again. She paints them and they go in someone else's house. All she has is a print or an electronic file. And I thought, I wouldn't do that. And I thought, if I put that much time and effort into one of these paintings, I'd hang it up on my own wall. Right? Or at least a friend, I'd go see it every day. So this is the mentality of the field of artistry. That I'm working for someone else's pleasure. And this is what we call a very satisfied field. The people in this field are not ambitious. Like everyone else, they want to make money and they need money, but they're not going to work really, really hard to make a lot of money. Srila Prabhupada often talks about how the people in this field are satisfied if they have a decent place to live, good food to eat, nice clothes to wear. They have loving family, loving romantic partner. They're treated with dignity in their craft, and they're pleasing a customer or client. And if they have that, they're satisfied. Kind of on a side note, something that I think is very important for all of us to understand whether or not we're in this field is that whenever we're dealing with people who work in this field, that their desire for customer or client satisfaction is just as strong as their desire to be paid. If someone comes to clean your house and you pay them and you think, okay, now that's it, that's not going to work. They really want to be treated with dignity and they want to be paid fairly. One of my friends was just telling me about two people that she was hiring who are in the field of artistry, that when she raised their salary a little bit, just a little bit, they're not getting paid a whole lot, but just raised it enough so that they felt they were treated with dignity, that the whole quality of their work improved. And I've noticed that when you actually thank such people, especially specifically, wow, I really like the way you cleaned in the hallway today. You know, you got some parts of the curtain that weren't usually done. Now, I will even go up to strangers who work in the field of artistry. Like, I remember going up to someone fixing a moving walkway in an airport, and I said, thank you for making the world work better. It's like the sun came up in his face. Or people, you know, cleaning the floor in a store. Thank you for making the world more beautiful. Same thing. It's like, they say, well, I'm trying. I have a little prediction here that India is going to lose its servant class. It's one of the opulences of India that doesn't exist in most of the rest of the world. In the United States, and I'm sure it's the same thing in Australia, if you want to get custom-made clothes, you've got to be really rich. In India, anybody can get custom-made clothes. In the United States, if someone comes and cleans your house once a month, again, you've got to have some decent money. What to speak of once a week? You're not going to have somebody coming in every day to clean your house. Most Americans don't have someone coming in to do their laundry, clean their house, cut their veggies, wash their dishes. In India, that's extremely common. Yeah? Practically any middle-class family, somebody comes, takes the washing, washes it, dries it, irons it, folds it, comes, puts it away. Someone comes and cleans the house every day. But I see, as a general rule in India, there are exceptions, that the servant class is not treated nicely. I see they're not paid adequately, and people ignore them. People don't smile at them, they'll insult them, they'll be nasty to them. You'll lose it. It's a way right now in which India is very, very wealthy. And it's a way right now in India that specifically helps women. It means that the woman doesn't have to do all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the childcare, all the laundry, all the everything, because there's a servant class. And my prediction is you're going to lose it. People in the field of artistry need to be treated with dignity and respect. They need to be acknowledged with kindness. You need to see that the customer or client is pleased. If they have all that, they're very satisfied, not ambitious people, and they provide the whole basic status quo for society. People who have the Dharma of the field of artistry are willing to sacrifice by resisting pressure for artificially increased profits or expediency that would interfere with the integrity or the quality of their work. Modern society pushes people in the field of artistry, make more money, work faster, but those who have dharmic expertise say no. I'm going to maintain the quality and integrity of my work or service. I saw a sign once up at a restaurant that says, "We make our sandwiches slowly. If you want fast food, go down the street." The fundamental questions they ask about their work are, is it beautiful and is it supportive? Okay, questions about the temperament of the people in the field of artistry? Yes?
Because Mataji, you mentioned that they would like to be appreciated at some point.
But not just like. That's their nourishment.
Okay.
The whole temperament of someone in the field of artistry is I want to please the client or customer.
Okay.
I want to please someone.
So would we connect that to Yasha?
Not necessarily. Yes?
Oftentimes today we say like people pleasing is looked in a negative way. Like you shouldn't people.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. There is a kind of people pleasing that's actually a problem. If I want to please people so that I don't take care of myself, I overextend myself, I don't have any kind of boundaries. Just like after the last session, some people said, "What do you need for the next 2 hours?" I said, "I need to be left alone." I said, "I need to chant and I just need to be left alone." Now, if I had toxic people pleasing, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't take care of myself. But that's different. That's not the same thing. People pleasing is I give more than I'm capable of giving. I never recharge. I don't take care of my own health. I don't take care of my own physical health. I don't take care of my own mental health. I don't take care of my own spiritual life. Prabhupada said the highest principle is to save others, but higher than that is to save yourself. So people pleasing as a problem is when you're so much into pleasing people that you lose yourself and you don't save yourself. And then what happens when you do that is you'll end up not people pleasing at all. You'll end up being grouchy and irritable and frustrated and resentful. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had some people say, well, I have a problem with people pleasing. Does that mean I'm in the field of artistry? I said, no, that just means you've had some kind of trauma. This means you haven't dealt properly with the world. You don't know how to deal with other people. You don't know how to set any kind of boundaries for yourself. But we're talking about a mood in one's work. And that doesn't so much exist in the other three fields. Is that clearer? No? I don't know if I should say this or not. As a teacher, I'm giving you what you need, but may not necessarily be what you wanted. Now, if I'm an expert teacher, which I hope I am after all these years, then what we try to do is we try to bring you from what you think you want, what you think you need, to what you actually need. That's kind of one of the arts of being an expert teacher, that people come in with, this is what I want, this is what I need, but you know what they really need, and you kind of flow to that. In artistry, they're giving you just what you want. What do you want? You go to a restaurant, you order something, they're not going to say, you sure that's good for your heart? You follow? They say, you look like you're a little overweight. You know, do you want to get that dessert? I mean, that would be outrageous. It would be rude. But not if you're a doctor. You follow? If you're a doctor and you're talking to someone, you're going to say, hey, you got to cut out the fats. You've got clogged arteries and you're headed for a heart attack, and that's your duty as a doctor to say that. You're a wait person in a restaurant. That would be against your Dharma. You follow? So therefore, while artistry is a field of honesty, it's not that same kind of honesty. Because there's this pleasing of the customer or the client. There's this mood of service. Any other questions about the mentality of the field of artistry? Yes?
We said in the morning that technologists, engineers, pilots all come in the field of artistry.
Correct.
But how is the mentality there? Is it beautiful, or I'm just not able to connect with that.
Okay. Somebody who's a software engineer, do you think they try to make their code beautiful? They definitely do.
I am a software engineer.
Well, if you're in the right place, okay, I don't know if you're in the right place or not. If that's actually your temperament. See, I have a friend whose temperament is in the field of ideas, and he's working in the field of artistry as an electrician. And he said, I've been telling him for years, you're in the wrong field. And so, not too long ago, he contacted me and he said, you know, I think you're right. But he's still not changing. He says, I have to do the wrong thing to make money. Right? He said, you know, the other electricians, they make all the wiring beautiful inside the boxes. If you actually have the temperament of the field of artistry, you're going to make beautiful code. Who's going to see it? Only the other programmers. And of course, you want the results of your coding to be beautiful. You want what the public sees. They're not seeing what's behind the scenes. You want that also to be beautiful. You're trying to give pleasure to the society. Trying to make things work in a way that's pleasing. What does software do? It enables our phones to work, our computers to work, our cars to work in a way that gives us pleasure and is pleasing, correct? That's kind of the essence of the field. So that you're happy. You get in your car, you turn it on, you're like, wow, this works. Look at that. Yeah?
When you say, is it supportive to yourself as an artist?
No. This is talking about outward.
Outward.
Outward. Thank you. Am I helping to support the society? This is our foundation field.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the temperament of artistry? Okay, going on to the field of ideas. So the temperament of this field, people who like to play with language or mathematics looking for truth. These people tend to be insatiably curious. They want to know what's true. They want to know what's real. They're often good at breaking ideas and projects into smaller components. They can see the patterns in ideas, relationships, and systems. They often like to teach others. They often like to research. They often like to study. Or they like to do a lot of meditation and introspection. The Dharmic expertise in this field. So the Gita lists this as peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, and religiousness. And the Bhagavad Purana lists it as satisfaction. Again, we have a field of satisfaction. And simple straightforwardness, which is an interesting kind of honesty. And mercy, which is something that will be very important in our second class. So here we also have honesty, but it's a different kind of honesty than in the field of artistry. This is the honesty of straightforward truth, whether you're pleased by it or not. Right? We're going to tell you what you need to hear, what's necessary. Either that or nothing. Right? Either silence or straightforward truth. People who have dharmic expertise in this field may be dedicated to assisting others mentally and emotionally by helping them to understand life and how things work. They may be dedicated to understanding themselves and to seeking higher states of clarity, insight, and awareness. They might be interested in helping people physically through medicine and teaching skills. They like to collect knowledge, understand it, use it, share it. Sometimes they can live in their heads, right? We talked about that this morning. Right? They can seem like kind of disconnected from everything, just living in their heads without so much concern for their body or what's going on around them. Now, some of the people in this field are going to study minutia. And we gave some examples this morning. Somebody in this field, they might study, the eating habits of a particular bear in Canada. Or the difference between the poetry of Srila Rupa Goswami and Kavi Karnapur. And some people in this field are going to be studying bigger pictures. So there are going to be a lot of systems thinkers in this field. Now, there are also a lot of systems thinkers in government and resources, but in government and resources, people study the systems in order to control them. Whereas in ideas, they study the systems to understand them so they can guide others. The people in this field tend to be kind of detached from life. Metaphorically, you can think of them like sports commentators. They're not playing the game, they're just watching it. So the people in this field often feel like that they're not really part of life, they're not really part of what's going on. They're kind of just detached and observing. They have kind of a quiet inner determination to remain balanced and detached. They don't have the kind of goal-driven activity that's very evident in the field of government and the field of resources. And like people in the field of artistry, they're satisfied with basic and simple things in life. But although both artistry and ideas are fields of satisfaction, people in ideas' satisfaction is much more from their vibrant inner mental and intellectual life rather than from their exterior comforts, which they might not even be aware of. And again, the honesty is different. The honesty in artistry is they're going to be honest about how much the pipe costs and how much they're charging you for labor. And the honesty in ideas is straightforward speaking. Those who have dharmic expertise in this field are willing to sacrifice for the sake of objective truth. Think about journalists who will go to jail rather than reveal their sources, right? Or people who are persecuted and tortured for teaching actual religion. The questions that they ask about their work are, is it true and is it wise? Any questions about the temperament of ideas? Yes?
In Krishna consciousness, we can say that many devotees do give lectures, teach.
Yes.
Not teaching, but Srimad Bhagavatam lectures or general regular lectures. So many devotees are acting on the platform of ideas.
No. Are they doing that as their livelihood?
No.
Okay. So let's say that you have another livelihood, you're a carpenter by trade, but you also teach Krishna consciousness because you're a devotee. So all devotees should teach Krishna consciousness. That doesn't mean that they're workers in the field of ideas. Just like my godbrother Jayananda, who Prabhupada said we should celebrate his disappearance like that of any of the great acharyas. What field was he working in? Artistry. He was still a preacher of Krishna consciousness. Excellent question. Thank you. People do get, it's a point of confusion.
Yeah.
Yes? Very, very definitely so. We know devotees who are very successful in the field of resources, who are also preachers of Krishna consciousness, but that's not their livelihood. That's not what they're doing, 8, 9 hours a day as their main contribution to society and to maintain themselves.
Swami, in
Yes.
that regard, then how does it then translate to full-time devotees? Because
Now, I always find, excuse me, please forgive me, that term really drives me bananas.
yes, sorry, I understand.
No, it's hard. We don't really have a better one, but that's not the right term.
Yeah, okay.
It really isn't. And again, I tried to brainstorm with people, like, we know what we're saying. We know what we're trying to convey, but using those words sort of implies that someone who has a place outside the temple and has a job and does some service in the temple on a part-time basis is not a devotee all day. Right? And we don't mean that. We don't mean to imply that, but that's kind of what it, do you follow what I'm saying? So I think what you're talking about is, what about people who just live in a temple ashram and serve the mission? Does anybody remember what those people are from my morning? No. What category? Huh?
No, I don't.
We just talked about it briefly.
Resources?
Outside of fields.
There you go. Commensals. Students retire, right? Brahmacharis are students. Vanaprasthas are retired. Sannyasis are civilly dead. Right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
Thank you. Students, retired, and dead people don't have careers.
Oh.
Yeah, like that. In fact, one of the indications that one should enter the Grahastha ashram is that one wants to have a career. One wants to contribute to the world. Now, I'm going to put a little plug here. That I would say that a lot of people that we say are in the Brahmachari ashram are actually in the Vanaprastha ashram. So mature brahmacharis who are taking a lot of responsibility for the mission and for preaching and starting their own projects are not really in the brahmachari ashram. The brahmachari ashram is really for children. It's supposed to be a school. You study, you don't teach. You're under strict discipline. You don't eat unless your authority says you can eat. And one is supposed to grow up from that and either go to the Grahastha ashram or the Vanaprastha ashram. And we have many devotees in our movement who are actually Vanaprasthas like that, but we call them brahmacharis. Say like Dravida Prabhu or Chaitanya Charan or Gauranga. They're not, those people are not in the, they may sleep in a brahmachari ashram building, but they're not, do you follow what I'm saying? But they're not in the brahmachari ashram, that's ridiculous. They're managing all these people and doing all these things and writing their own books and having their own programs and so many things. And many of our devotees in the years before they took sannyas, like Krishna Kshetra Swami in the many years before he took sannyas, what's his name now? In Los Angeles, Amala Bhakta, okay, what's his name now? Anyway, he's a sannyasi, I don't remember his new name. So he was also like that, right? Dravida Prabhu, I mean, these people, they're actually not in the brahmachari ashram. And if people want to be full-time, lifetime renunciates, and they really want to use their nature in service, but not as a career, that's the way to go. The people, if you stay in the brahmachari ashram, you're simply doing very menial, like we were saying, even people who just travel as nomads and they just do some little jobs here and there. And that's suitable for a few people. I think in most temples there's 1 or 2 people who are in that category. They're actually literally lifetime in the brahmachari ashram, and they do some little things to take care of the temple. And little things as needed. One of my godbrothers in Bhaktivedanta Manor was like that. He had not left the building more than 2 times in 40 years. And he wasn't a pujari exactly, he was a pujari assistant. Like he got the dresses ready and put away the jewelry and got out the jewelry. And I don't think he ever dressed the deities. I don't think he ever even offered an arati. And he just did, this very simple service, But yeah, those people don't have careers as such. Is that clear? They don't really fit in any of the 4 fields. Any other question about that? And thank you for, I don't get asked that very much, so thank you. Anyone else have any other question about the field of ideas? Okay, go on to the field of government. Okay, what's the inclination for the field of government? People who are very concerned about fairness and rules. Like, a lot of kids will do that. They'll say, oh, that's not fair. But someone for whom that's their real absorption. Fairness, rules, justice, morals, ethics. They'll often fight easily, especially when some higher principle is involved. They tend to have a thick skin. They tend not to be so affected by criticism. They often have a take charge mentality. They can be very goal-oriented, decisive, determined. They're often systems thinkers. They're often aware in the world of the flow of people. Not so much like resources where they're aware of the flow of resources and they're aware of the flow of money, but they're aware of flow of people and what do they need. Those who have dharmic expertise in the field of government intuitively understand emerging trends in society. The needs of the people in the place which they govern, whether it's just an apartment building, right, or it's a city, or it's a whole country. And sensing the system, they know how to move the resources around in order to take care of people. So my grandson-in-law is in the field of government. He's an ex-Marine, and he's worked as right now he's working on something else, but he's worked as a security guard in shops. And he gave a seminar to the devotees called Situational Awareness. How to make sure that you protect yourselves, when you're out walking down the street and so forth. And he gave an example that in the shop, that he developed an intuitive grasp of what person was likely to steal. Like he could tell by which aisle they went in first and how they were dressed and what kind of facial expression they had as to whether or not they were likely to be a thief. The Bhagavad Gita lists the dharmic expertise of those in this field as heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, that's important, generosity, that's important, and leadership. Now remember we talked about how the field of government are the leaders for society, but there are leaders in all 4 fields. Please do not make the mistake of thinking, if I'm a leader, then I'm in the field of government. Nah, not true, okay? That's like, if there's clouds, is there necessarily rain? No. Okay, so if you're a leader, you can be a leader in any field. But these are the people who lead society. And the Bhagavad Purana says dynamic power, strength, determination, heroism again, tolerance, generosity, again we find that, great endeavor, and steadiness. Now Arjuna has a son named Abhimanyu. Manyu means danger, Abhi means toward. These are people who run toward danger. So remember I talked about what career epitomizes the field of government? The firefighter. Someone who's running, everyone else is running out of the fire, they're running towards it. Somebody's shooting guns in an empty warehouse, the police officers are going to run into it, everybody else is running out of it. Just a few days ago, I talked to him, I was doing a consultation with a devotee, and he was saying how that he really likes, you know, organizing systems, making sure everybody gets what they need and taking care of everybody. And he said, I'm always doing my best to avoid crises. He said, but when there is a crisis, I immediately go into this state of calm focus. People who are naturally have the temperament for the field of government are energized by crisis. They tend to have a natural charisma that inspires others and gets people to trust and follow them. And this is true even for the social worker, for the police officer. Now, although they're energized by crisis, their natural demeanor, and Srila Prabhupada talks about this with regard to Arjuna, their general demeanor is compassion, generosity, and tolerance. You notice those were the qualities listed in Shastra? Because remember, these are like the parents of society. So a parent may be ready to defend their children and defend their home against an attacker, but their general mood is going to be that of tolerance and compassion and care. They collect wealth and redistribute it. People in the field of government do not, people with the dharmic expertise of the field of government are not profit-minded. Because they're not trying to create sustainable regenerative wealth. They're trying to redistribute wealth for the sake of social justice and social harmony and need. Now, many people in the field of government are also very interested in study. Their study tends to have a practical bent. They're mostly interested in studying history, politics, martial arts, law, morals, ethics, justice. Now, Prabhupada talks about this quite a lot, that those with dharmic expertise in the field of government do not just protect the people in their domain. They also protect the land and the animals. Now, agricultural land is especially protected by those in the field of? Who is protecting the agricultural land and animals? Those in the field of? Resources. So the government is protecting agricultural land and animals indirectly through those in resources. But the non-agricultural land, the non-agricultural animals, they're protecting directly. My grandson was asking me about some famous person who collects money to create parks and reserves for endangered wildlife. He said, is that work in the field of government? I said, absolutely. Those with dharmic expertise in the field of government are willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of justice, being an honorable person, and the public interest. And, you know, they're willing to literally sacrifice their right arm. Literally. They're willing to give their life, they're willing to sacrifice their right arm. The questions they ask about their work are, is it just and is it honorable? Any questions about the temperament of people in the field of government?
The question mentioned here, is it honorable? So what sort of, like, what are they asking about it? What is honorable?
Am I acting, is my actions for myself and for society based on firm morals and ethics? I mean, everybody wants to be ethical, but this is the particular absorption of those in the field of government.
But, like, not so much here, but, like, for example, in other countries where, like, for example, some parts of, like, for example, even Nepal, like, a lot of the government stuff, there's a lot of corruption, so the honor... Right now in the world, there's corruption everywhere. Mm-hmm. So that means... That's why we're teaching this. Okay. So That means they're not that honorable, they just.
Okay, it means one of two things. It means either they're in the wrong field. Because when you take and we'll go over this after our break, if you take your ethics of one field and bring it into the other field, you're going to create corruption. It's not just your personal matter. Oh, I'm just working in the wrong field to make money. No, you're going to corrupt that field. You're going to introduce corruption. Because what's ethical to you in your temperament is going to become unethical in that field. The other way the fields become corrupt is that people have the tendency for a field, but they haven't been trained in the dharmic expertise. I mean, think of it as, you know, a beginning, like one of my grandsons plays the saxophone. So when he was first learning, like first, you know, all know what a saxophone is? Does everyone know what a saxophone is? Do you know what like a trumpet or a trombone is? Yes? So something like that. Okay, but louder. So I was visiting them when he was first learning, when he was a beginning student. And they had his music teacher come to the house. And my kid said to me, Mata, you know, when his teacher comes, you probably want to go in the door and put in earplugs. Then the next year when I visited, he was part of a group that was performing on stage. So the beginning initial tendency for something is not necessarily pleasing. So you've got people, they may have the tendency, they may have the psychology for working in the field of government, but they haven't been trained in the Dharma. They might have been trained in the information, and they might have been trained in the skills, but they haven't been trained in the Dharma. That we have to offer. You can go to so many places and get trained in information and skills in a career, but who's teaching the Dharma? Again, or corruption could be that they don't belong there at all. They're working in government, but they're actually an ideas person, or they're actually a resources person, or they're actually an artistry person, and they don't belong in the field of government, in which case they're mucking it up. And we'll get into that after our break. Okay, now ideally, our tendencies should be noticed when we're children. And the research shows that by the time we're 13, a person's basic values can be identified. Now, in my decades, nearly 30 years of teaching hundreds of children, I would say that many times it's discernible before that. But ideally, that's noticed when we're young and we're trained properly according to our nature when we are young. So that those beginning inclinations, those tendencies towards one of these fields, we learn to work in the Dharma of that field, and we learn the skills. Srila Prabhupada says that the Brahmacharya ashram is meant for training in the higher values of life, along with getting specific training for a livelihood. That's in the second canto. So, but specific training for a livelihood is, again, not just the information and the skills, but it's also the Dharma. So let's look at a few examples. So I talked about how our youngest son was running little businesses when he was 7 and 9, right? And he kept running those businesses. By the time he was, I guess, maybe 19 or 20, he was already second in charge of an international textile company. And then when he was 23, 24, he became the CEO of a prasadam business. But that was evident even when he was very young. Of course, sometimes our nature comes out in a way that's disturbing because we haven't been trained in the Dharma. Now remember, Krishna says that our nature can't be repressed. Right? So if we're in some situation where, for whatever reason, our parents, our teachers, they don't recognize our essential nature as being positive if directed in a particular way. So what could be trained positively, we may get criticized for. So we have a number of examples in our book. These are all true examples. So one of them is this boy in school. This is a true story. He was always doing this. Hey, stop that. Stop it. Go to the principal's office. And one day when he was 10, his teacher said, I want to see you after school. Oh boy, now in trouble again. And the teacher said, you're not in trouble. I have a present for you. And the teacher gave him drums. He became actually a world famous drummer. Another story is of a little girl who was always jumping out of her seat during class. Jumping out of her seat, running around. And there was an emergency meeting between the teachers and the counselors and the parents. You know, we think your daughter has ADHD, maybe she should be medicated. And one of the teachers said, let's try an experiment. And he took a room and he had the girl just be in a room by herself. And they turned on some music. And the girl got up and started to dance. And he said, your child isn't sick, she's a dancer. Not only did she become a very famous dancer, she became a famous choreographer. And she choreographed many of the big musicals in America on Broadway. I know one kid growing up in the movement who was always told, mind your own business. He'd be saying, but they're not following the rules. That's not fair. You said they have to, but that person isn't, they're not doing what, be quiet, mind your own, but they're, mind your own business. And many times a day, his teachers, his parents, his siblings would tell him, mind your own business, mind your own business. So then he got to be, I guess, like was 18, and he went on Indradyumna Swami's Polish tour. He became the second in charge of security, and they said he was the best leader that they ever had. Because he was very good at minding everybody else's business and making sure that everybody followed the rules. My personal conviction is that a lot of the people who cause a lot of trouble in society in general, and also in our Hare Krishna movement, they go on social media and they make a lot of noise. Where's the justice? Where's the morals? Where's the ethics? Are frustrated government-minded people. They don't have any proper outlet for it. And so I was teaching this in a Gurukul high school, and when I was talking about that sometimes our nature is something that we got in trouble for. And so one of the kids said, well, I'm always getting in trouble for thinking. So I asked his mother, is that true? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, what happens? And she said, well, he'll be sitting around, and I say, what are you doing? I'm thinking. Well, stop thinking and do something practical. Remember how people think that the work of the field of ideas is not practical? Right? Actually, I just had a teacher call me this morning to consult about this kid in school who's often getting into fights and who enjoys breaking things. And they've tried everything. And I said, you know, when you've tried everything and you can't stop a behavior in a person, when you've gone through everything, then it may be a natural inclination that's somehow being misdirected. I said, you know, there are careers in destruction. Right? There are, you know, there's wrecking companies. That's what they do. They destroy things. You know, what is it? I said, we haven't figured it out yet. We're just still, he's only 8, so we're still kind of working on this. And I just had the conversation today, but I said, why don't we see if we can work this out? What is the positive outlet for the stuff that he's doing? How can we get his needs met in a positive way instead of just always telling him, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad? Is there a place for something like this? What do you think I got in trouble for when I was growing up? When I was 3, in preschool.
Teaching.
Yes, who was I teaching? No. I was teaching the teachers. So the teachers came to called my parents for a conference, and they said, your child is really a problem. She won't play with the other kids. She comes up to us, the teachers, and she's telling us, you see that little kid over there? See that girl over there? You have to help her play with this because she doesn't understand how to do that, and she needs it. And they said, you know, you've got to tell her to stop teaching. So the whole time I was growing up, I was told, stop teaching, especially by my teachers and my mother. Stop teaching, stop teaching. Now, as an adult, one of the things that I do, by the way, is I teach teachers how to teach. The first book I wrote was by Kunta children, How to Teach. But now if you would ask me when I was 13, what are you good at? Or what do you like? Would I have said teaching? No. I thought it was a character flaw that I had to get rid of. I thought it was something bad in myself. It wasn't until I was 24 when I met my god sister, Jyotirmayi, and she trained me in the Dharma and the craft of teaching, that after a couple weeks I'm like, oh my God, I'm a teacher. Now, I'm very grateful that other parts of my nature were very much nourished by my parents and teachers. I was very much encouraged in study and in research and in writing and I was in the public speaking and debate club for many years. So that part was, but the teaching part I was really criticized for that. So when we look at what is our inclination, what do I just do without being asked, without being paid? Years ago here in Melbourne, actually, in the temple room, I was giving a class, and this one woman must have been 40s, 50s. I was 10 minutes into the class, and she comes in the temple room and she starts telling everybody where to sit. Do you remember that? I had to stop the class. Remember, I had to stop the class. Now she's in India. Anyway, I had to just go. It was going on for a while. You know, and I said, are you done? And she's like, I'm done. And I said, do you have any management position? And she said, no. And I said, would you please get one? So, you know, what is it that we just do? Because we can't repress our nature. And if we haven't been trained in it, it may come out in a way that's disturbing. It may come out in a way that we feel is something bad about ourselves. What do I do without being asked, without being paid? I can't be punished out of it. I can't be rewarded out of it. What is my general tendency? And how do I want to contribute to the world? Not just what do I want to do for fun. You know, maybe I want to play volleyball for fun. But does that mean that I want to be a professional athlete, entertaining other people with my volleyball skills? How do I want to contribute? And again, what are the main questions? I mean, we all care about beauty. So well, not everybody cares about beauty and functionality. I think graffiti artists don't care about that. But most people care that they want the world to be beautiful. They want things to work. They want there to be sustainable, regenerative wealth they can count on. They want there to be justice, morals, and ethics. And they want truth and wisdom. But what am I willing to sacrifice for? What am I enthused to sacrifice for? What do I want to dedicate 8 or 9 hours every day for? Now sometimes people say, well, there's more than one. And I say, if there's more than one, are you willing to outsource one of those? Would you be happy if someone else did it? Like I was talking to one devotee and he said, I can't decide if I'm in government or ideas. He said, because I've set up all these projects, devotional projects. He said, I've set up all these projects, and in terms of government, I've worked a lot with the political government. I've worked a lot with getting the permits, getting all the laws, you know, making sure that we have the proper land, building the proper buildings, making sure there's electricity, that there's water, that everybody's taken care of, and dealing with all that, and doing all the negotiation and all the diplomacy. And then he said, on the idea side, I worked on the vision. I was always working on the vision, and what's the plan, and what's the syllabus, and what's the curriculum going to be, and how are we going to develop everything on that side. And I said, well, which one do you want to spend 8 hours a day working on? He said, I can do both. And so I was kind of confused. Well, where do I go from here? And then I said, okay, suppose that you were doing the negotiation and the diplomacy and working with the government and getting the building and arranging everything, and someone else was doing the visioning and the curriculum planning. And would you be happy with that? He said, no way. I said, suppose you're doing the visioning and the planning and the syllabus and the study and the research, and someone else was doing the diplomacy and the negotiation and getting the land and making sure there was plumbing. Would you be okay with that? He said, absolutely. I said, okay, well, there you go. What is it that you really want to give your heart, that you feel incomplete if you're not doing it? Because our nature, it's the expression of ourself. If we think about what do we mean by perfection in spiritual life? What's our concept of moksha? It's that I am the ideal form of myself in the service of Krishna. And of course we think about that ultimately, I'm a gopi, I'm a cowherd boy, I'm a cow or whatever, you know, I'm a flower in Radharani's hand. I'm the ideal expression of myself in the service of Krishna. Am I correct? Isn't that, am I getting it right? That's our understanding of perfection. Well, that's true even here. So here I have a temporary identity. This is not my real eternal identity. But in this identity, our perfection is to be the best ideal of myself in the service of Krishna. It's exactly the same principle. And when I'm doing that, then I'm willing to work for that all the time. I'm willing to really dedicate myself to that. I feel like I'm in my place. Any questions or discussions at all about finding our nature and understanding our particular nature in the four fields? Yes?
Do you think it's practical to allow a child to follow their interests so they naturally go towards the Dharma just by following it?
They'll naturally go, everybody naturally goes toward their inclination in one of these four ways. But interest is a funny thing. Like, again, because children like to play. They're supposed to play. Actually, when children play, it's part of their learning. And even as adults, we need some sort of recreation and play. So children may just play. Prabhupada talks about this a lot. That children, if you leave them to their own devices, may just play all day. You have to, Prabhupada will say, you have to force them to go to school. So, you know, a kid's interest may be, I'm just going to, you know, play baseball all day.
But like year 12 subjects, selection.
Well, as I said, the research shows that a person's value system is evident by the time they're 13. And you want to look again as what is their values. And in that, once you get that, what is their values, what is their prosperity type, then within that you look at what are their interests. I mean, I'm traveling with one of my grandsons now, and he's doing homeschooling. And we started out with a regular maths program, I think it was Algebra 1. Can't remember if it was Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. And he didn't like it. And it was just like torture trying to get him to do this, which wasn't particularly pleasant for me. You know, and I said, well, is there any kind of math stuff that you like? And he started talking to me. He loves to play tennis. And he started talking to me how he and his brothers would compile statistics about tennis. And he talked about how he was constantly compiling statistics and doing statistical tests. And I said, do you love statistics? He's like, I absolutely love statistics. So we switched, and what we've been doing all these months is his learning statistics. So he finished a basic statistical course online. Now he's starting a more advanced one. And he read, because he loves tennis, so I started having him read a book about statistics in tennis and reporting on that. Then he read a book about statistics in sports. Now he's studying a book on statistics in general, which is then going to lead, as soon as he gets home, he's going to start a course also in coding. He doesn't want to be a programmer. But it's good to learn some coding if you want to work with statistics. So yes, he's also very interested in nature and animals. So he loves the natural world and he loves animals. So he's also studying something about biology. Now he'd be able to be like a data analyst in many different areas. But I could see him doing some kind of research and data analysis, especially in the natural world. But the first thing that we looked at is what's his field? What's his field? What's his prosperity types? That's what we looked at first. Because if I just said, what are you interested in? He would say, tennis. But when we look at his field and his prosperity types, it's not that he was going to become a professional tennis player. So if I just looked at that, I might become confused. For myself, if you ask me what are my interests, my personal interests are so broad. I'm interested in almost anything. Like, seriously. My curiosity for learning is so that would be tough. You know, I mean, I think it's taken a long, like I am particularly interested in leadership and management and governance. I don't want to work in the field of government. I don't like to work in the field of government at all, although I'm extremely good at the skills. Not the diplomacy part. I'm not good at that at all. But I'm definitely good at managing and organizing stuff. But I like to be an advisor to the field of government. I like to understand, that's kind of like sort of what I'm doing right now. Like the whole part 3 of our book is like that. What are the whole systems? How would a society look like? Like my co-author Rukmini, she has much more interest in the field of resources than I do. So we're both in the field of ideas, but she's more interested in the field of resources. She's done a lot more study about economics. So I've done a lot of studies about leadership, and she's done more studies about economics. But she's not an economist. So if you ask me what am I interested in, you might not hit the right thing. Or like I was saying, this morning, how I love art. I'm intensely, beauty for me, if I don't have Sri in my life, especially visual beauty, but also auditory and olfactory beauty, those are super important things to me. I'm very interested in them. I could talk to you for a long time about traditional incense. Like a really long time. I could talk to you about frankincense and myrrh and a guru and how it's harvested and what's happening to it and how it's being exploited and how 50 years from now no one's going to have any of these scents anymore and how these scents affect our consciousness and how they were used in worship and how they were used in the Shastra, and I could go on and on and on until you would fall asleep about that, right? But that doesn't mean that I should be, creating perfumes. Nor does it mean that I should have a business in oils and resin incense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's hard to kind of set someone into one of those categories. That's what I find interesting.
You're looking for a temperament. You're looking for a temperament. Okay? And this has been so satisfying and enriching for me, not only in the course of writing the book with Rukmini, who is one of my dearest friends and just an extraordinary human being and devotee on every level, but not just that, but in the course of teaching this, I've become more and more and more and more and more convinced and more appreciative of the beauty of our Shastra. When I first started teaching this, I felt that I was doing this as service to Srila Prabhupada, who wanted us to bring Varnashram to the world and to ISKCON. And that was my mood, and I could see there was a great need among the devotees and among the world. But the more I got into it, the more I started feeling that I was also really being a servant of Shastra. It was kind of a far out thing. I felt like the personalities of the Shastra were there. That was really, really cool. So generally in the world, when you look at what kind of career you have, they'll ask those sort of questions. What are you interested in? What do you like doing? What are you good at? And they don't get to the essence of what Krishna is talking about when he talks about career. Those are important questions, and they're interesting questions, and they should be asked. But they're not the question. The question is, what's your temperament? Do you want to make the world work? Do you want to make things work? And do you want to make them work beautifully? Do you want to create pleasure for society? Are you essentially a satisfied person? Are you satisfied with basic creature comforts and being treated with dignity and pleasing people? Are you not an ambitious person? Is your basic mood to serve? Or are you a big, expansive person? If you can earn enough money 3 days a week, are you going to work 5 anyway? Are you thinking about how this business could become more profitable? And how we could get better distribution of these resources over here so that the products were fresher on the shelves? And how we could make sure that there's proper utilization of the land so that we're not exhausting the land. And you're constantly in this expansive view, thinking about prosperity. Everybody's got to have really good prosperity. And I've got to make sure that I take care of myself in such a way that there's this kind of prosperity, and always understanding these sort of flows and how they work together. And okay, all right, people aren't getting this right now. We've had this kind of weather situation. So we're going to have to switch to this at this date and do this over here and this over here. You know, or are you the kind of person who's like, that's not right, that's not just, that's not fair. Why are those criminals getting away with things over there? Why aren't those children being protected? Why do we have people doing things that are unethical? You know, we've got to have the proper rules and the proper laws, and we have to have the proper systems in place to make sure that people are taken care of. And I'm just willing to give everything. I'm willing to give all my personal wealth. I'll amass wealth, but I'm willing to give everything to make sure that people are taken care of. I'll fight with the criminals, and I'll fight with the demons, and I'll give my life for that, whether I'm fighting in the courtroom, or I'm fighting in the parliament, or I'm fighting with the fire, or I'm fighting on the battlefield, or I'm fighting with the drug dealers on the street. And it's, you know, I'm trying to make sure that everything's always peaceful and everyone's always taken care of. But when there's a crisis, shh, I come into my own. And I deal with it with calm and focus so that I only see the eye of the bird. Or do I have the temperament of detachment? Looking at things kind of above everything. Trying to give people wisdom, trying to give people knowledge, maybe spending a lot of time in contemplation and meditation. Being willing to be straightforward, even if people don't like it, if it's what they need, or else being willing to be silent. Being willing to live very austerely rather than to be compromised in my principles. Having an insatiable interest in finding truth, no matter what the cost is, no matter where it leads me, whether or not it makes me look good or bad. Trying to find the patterns in truth and understanding and in abstract ideas. So what's my temperament? What bodily organ do I fit into, basically? You know, am I a heart muscle? Am I a lung cell? Am I a stomach cell? Am I a, what am I meant to, what machine do I have? And then within that field, okay, what prosperity types enrich me? What are my particular interests? Because each field is very broad. Like if you're really interested in health, let's say you're really interested in medicine and health, but you could work in there in any of the 4 fields. You could work in there as a nurse in artistry. You could run a health business in resources. You could be making sure that everyone has equal access to health in government. You could be working as a physician in ideas. So if you say, I'm interested in health, I'm interested in medicine, but then you look at your temperament for the field. Is that helpful?
I
Yes.
just have one question. So, under the resources field, a lot of it, it's like you have to be the owner of the business in order to be really.
Not everybody. The financial manager in the business is also in resources. The salespeople are also in resources. It's not only the owner.
Though that you need to have experience and you have to be older in age to be under resources, or is that totally contemplated?
As I said, my son was running a business when he was like 20.
Yeah, so like that was one exception, but generally.
I don't think that's an exception. I think the problem nowadays is that nobody thinks about this until they're 22 or 24. That in our modern society, we have the idea that kids just play until they're at least 20 or 22 years old. My own personal conviction is that the great popularity of computer games is because we're not training kids in career at a young age. Computer games gives you the illusion of mastering a skill. That adolescents have a huge biological urge to master a skill. It's huge. It's just as much of a biological drive as sexuality. I want to gain independence and master a skill. I want to get really good at something. And instead we say, no, just be really good at doing your schoolwork. That doesn't make it for most people. I'm sorry to say this, but most of the work we do in school, like, sorry, I'm not going to say it anyway. Who looks at it? Do your parents even look at it? You know, so people go to computer games as a way of like trying to master a skill. But no, if we returned to the system pre-industrial days of where people were actually trained in an occupation as adolescents and often even as children, and then by the time that you're an adult, you're already expert. You hit 18, 20 years old, you're already expert. You're not a master. You're not going to be a master probably till you're 30, 35. But you're expert enough to go out and earn a decent livelihood. That was the way it was in human society for thousands or millions of years. And we've really messed it up. Like royally. We have really, really, really messed it up. And people are 35, 45, 48, and they're like, I don't know who I am. I hate my work. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to take just a 5-minute break. If we can come back at just 4 o'clock, just stretch. If you want to use the bathroom, get a drink of water. But please be back in 5 minutes. Okay? We have a very exciting part 2. Woohoo! I think this next part we have is the most exciting thing that I teach in Kriya Dharma. So, see you in 5 minutes.